Namaste. So, as we are saying, the recovery of the Vedas was important for several reasons, is important for several reasons. It's not just about connecting us to our unique heritage and past, but the Vedic rishis, way early, before human beings could even think about humanizing what it means to be a human, 10,000 years back, they had traced a path for man, and they had known the original script which is written in man's consciousness for the future. And whenever we lose the Vedas, as we see in the periods of decline, man loses his path. And there is a reason for that. Because human consciousness ordinarily is stuck within a magic circle. And we think this is us. And then after a while we feel stifled, we want to, go further. And because the Vedas are lost, we have one of the two options. One is that either a material life in which we indulge because we don't know there is a greater possibility, or else we look for a path of nirvana, moksha, because we want to get out of it. But this is precisely what the Vedic rishis contradicted. They took a path of fullness. So when we look at the Vedic path, the unique part of it is, of course, there are many unique things. For instance, eternal religion. It's a universal truth. They were not making a cult or a limited religion based on one book, one great being. But they were opening a path for mankind. There is an eternal truth that we need to know, that we need to grow in our lives, and we need to attune ourselves to. And you can approach it in many ways. This was the fundamental doctrine. And this eternal truth, they took the path of ascension. So what really this ascension is as opposed to extinction. So extinction is where we go out of the boundaries of nature and finish ourselves into nirvana or moksha or lay. Ascension is basically that there are greater possibilities concealed for our own being. And by ascending a whole tire of existence, we can reclaim them. They are our, actually, in a certain sense, inheritance. So, Vedic rishis saw human beings as coming from the home of truth, or rather the rays, the Swarlok, which we spoke about last time. And man is someone who has fallen from this Swarlok, and he needs to ascend. But the difference is that as he ascends, he will help matter also take this ascension. The union of Prithvi, the material principle, and heaven, the Deus, was their entire purpose. That as we ascend, because the ascension has to be effected in the human body and not a post-mortem salvation, as Sri Aurobindo puts it. So as we ascend, its imprint helps the human consciousness or the human body, the material nature, everything tends to get influenced and affected by that. So it became a path which automatically was translated into a goodness or the development of a divine state upon the whole earth. That's why the Vedic rishis' prayer, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, it's so profound. How did they conceive of all this? Because they saw the interconnectedness of all creation. They saw that a lonely ascension has no meaning. We are all together in this great boat, and we is not just human beings but everything else. So this was their essential path, and the way they revealed to man, it was several layered, and it was possible to have it in several layers because they saw the unity of creation, and they also saw that what applies at physical level because of this unity of creation can equally apply at a psychological level in different ways. And at a psychological level, the symbol applies at a deeper, still higher spiritual level. Let's take an example. At the most outer material level, we have fire. So fire is one of the Vedic gods. So what is fire? Oh, it is Agni. What is its role? It burns. And what else it does? It purifies. It burns as well as it purifies. It also consumes. Now, if you go still deeper into fire, you will say, well, as energy, it is present in everything. It is the one which is the energy which is building the system of worlds. So that's where material science will take us. Now, the same fire within us. See, the outer fire has two properties, heat and light. The same fire within human being becomes the power of illumination and action, will and knowledge. Knowledge is the one which illumines the consciousness, and will is the one which pushes us. So at once they could use this symbol of Agni. And another beautiful thing was they used a language, the Sanskrit language allowed it in such a beautiful way. So when they use the word Agni, so Agni literally comes from the root Ag. And today also we use, no, Aage Bad. Ag, go forward. So Agni is the leader of the sacrifice. First light up the Agni. So even in human march, the torch, the flame, symbolically also today, Olympic starts with that flame. So flame carries within itself all these layers of meaning. So Vedic rishis used it so powerfully, and this is possible in English language because in Sanskrit language because it is always connected to the roots. So Agni meant at once many things. So fire meant light up the fire of aspiration. What it will do? It will consume all that is impure. So fire is invoked in Isha Upanishad. We have this wonderful line, Agni ne supatharai, show me the path of the right. It will destroy the obstacles. It will remove all that is coming in the way. It will purify our being. That is the nature of Agni. Even physical Agni does that. It will reduce all that, is unwanted to ashes. But at the same time, if you pass it gold through it, gold becomes purer. It changes its quality. So Agni is the first thing. And at a still deeper level, it is the divine energy in the race. So there is a divine energy, divine will, divine wisdom which is working within creation. And our task was first to tune into that. So he became the priest of the sacrifice. You first call him because he knows the mantra, he knows all the right things. So you invite Agni to come and light up the flame. So they use this language. We need not follow that way. We have Mother and Sri Aurobindo have given us a much simpler way. Some mystics speak about it, but in their own language. But the first thing is Agni. He is the great God who will, once he is lit up, he will show us the path. So this idea today we have, where is the Guru? So the Guru should guide up. Now the moment you have the flame of Agni increasing within us, it will be the guide. That's how the Vedic mystics saw it. And the task of the Guru is to ignite this flame. Mother puts it very beautifully in one of her conversations in the agenda. She says, what does the Guru do? The Guru connects your psychic being, connects you to the source of light. The psychic being in man can do the same thing. So if you have a developed psychic being, you will automatically have the path opening before you because it's made of the stuff of fire. So this flame, once it is lit, it automatically shows us the path and it will never die. So Agni is described as immortal in our mortality. Whatever you may do, once this flame is lit, there are people who know it. Love for God, for instance, one example. You may pass through many other attractions and attachment. They will come and go, but the love for God will keep returning and increasing. This is an experience. Same with aspiration, Godward aspiration. You may go this way, that way, get distracted, but ultimately this is the fire which will keep on growing. So Agni is that flame which carries everything upward. As energy, it carries all the things upward. So this is the nature of Agni. Light up this flame, and then to make the flame grow, there are other gods who are invoked, and we have to pour in the sacrifice. The Havi, the more you pour into it, it will grow. Meaning thereby, what is the Havi? Turning all our actions Godward, so that they may be impelled by the Agni within. Right now we are impelled by egoistic motives. So the moment we offer it, I want to be impelled by the law of truth, then Agni takes the Havi, consumes it, and the God Agni grows in us. So there is the growth of illumination, growth of force of action. Whereas if we try to cover it, then we engage into a battlefield. There are forces of darkness which try to cover it. And they come, and just as we spoke last time about the conversation between Sarma and the Panis, they will say, what is all this? See, an average human being, this is the problem. If he asks, what do you gain by turning to spiritual life? So supposing you say, I grow in aspiration, I grow in faith, I grow in devotion, I grow in surrender, I grow in sincerity, then he will say, this is okay, but what do you gain? He cannot understand that this is the supreme gain because it will change you. Is it that you get more wealth, you achieve more success? Now the Vedas don't speak about it, but it is understood that if you grow in intelligence, when your intelligence becomes swift, by the action of the Aswins, you can apply it in any field, including the material, but that's not the immediate thing. So the Vedic symbol applies at all levels. Material plenitude and inner plenitude. But the inner plenitude is the one which is more important. But they were not against having outer things. That story of Yagvalki where he says, take the cows, 1,000 cows, horns tipped with gold. And he stopped in King Janak's Sabha and he's asked, are you sure you are the greatest Brahmgyani? He says, I don't know, but I need cows. I need prosperity for my ashram. And then, of course, there is the famous Gargi and Yagvalk Samvad. So their growth through Agni, they grow into purer and purer form of who we are. So once we understand that in our consciousness, we are a mix of animal, man's house holds in him not just the gods alone, the demon and the jinn. The beast growls in his ant den. So this is what we are. Though we have a very good image of ourselves. But leave a person in the, when nobody is watching him apparently. See how the beast will growl. Dire mutterings will rise. So all these are facts of our existence. So this is half an existence. They are eating away. All our efforts are going into waste. Because we are feeding these denizens. Whereas if we feed the higher gods, then we grow into their likeness. So Havi is putting all our actions, dedicating it into the fire. Same with Gritam, the intellect. When the intellect wants to know about God, wants to enhance its understanding. So it's not just about God knowledge cut off from the world knowledge. God knowledge implies world knowledge in a better way. Why? Because God is the essence of everything. As Sri Aurobindo says, you cannot know. That's how Brahman is described. Yasmin vigyate vigyati sarvam. If you know him, you know everything in a much, much better way. Mother was asked about knowledge of scientist and a yogi. She says, yes, a yogi can know about everything that a scientist knows, but he will look at it and understand it very differently. For example, a person who fixes the fuse understands only the wire, understands the amount of current that can flow. Perhaps not even that. He just knows fuse chala gaya hai. MCP on karna hai, or you have to just change the wire. Why? May not. Engineer will know a little more. And the person who has laid down the lines knows it in the right way. Why fuse is going again and again. So he corrects the problem at a root level. So the knowledge of the yogi is more complete even about worldly things. It's not that the yogi is not interested in worldly things. He is. But he looks at it with a very different vision. So this ascension was, every time there was an ascension, there was a greater consciousness, a reversal, and a better understanding of ourselves and the world, and therefore a greater possibility of action. That's why these Vedic rishis could have not only Shastra Vidya, but Shastra Vidya and different kinds of knowledge system, Vedic mathematics, the 7 planes of existence. What a wonderful creation. I was recently, in fact, yesterday somebody was talking to me about Vedic agriculture. And I was surprised it's based on a pure consciousness-based understanding of how the plants operate. I mean, once you understand it, this mentalized knowledge that you have to use artificial pesticides goes away. Within nature's ecosystem, you have a wonderful way of, combining things without using any of these techniques, and it's so wonderful. So, this knowledge they could have, even if you take Ayurveda. How did they know about these pharmacopoeia, about 5,000 medicines, and the fact that we have survived so far with the Ayurveda, so is itself an empirical proof. So, we call it Ayurveda, somewhere else it could be herbal treatment, doesn't matter. So what did they do? Once the intellect was poured into this flame, then it became more and more illumined. And then one by one the gods started coming. So who are these gods? Physically, outwardly, Varuna is the god of rain. Or, they are different versions. But inwardly, he is the god of vastness. And very interestingly, Varuna is, I'm not going into the philology because that's going in a very different direction. So vastness and purity. As if the smaller you are, the more impure you are. And then you understand why the mother says fear is the greatest impurity. You know what is fear? Shrinking into a hole. Where we are just concerned about my little existence. And from that many psychological principles derived. Think of oneself and you will be miserable. This is one of the sutras. Why? Because you have entered into a narrow hole. my little self want to preserve it, you will enter into a narrow hole. And existence will be miserable. From there will come up these aggressions because you want to preserve yourself against a whole world which is so frightful. So, you see that kind of doctrine. Whereas when Varuna is born, he is vast. He can cast his vision into large spaces of time. He is the one who has the larger picture. Nowadays we use the word larger picture. So Varuna automatically will give us the greater picture. Whereas if he is not come to our aid, we'll have the smaller picture, the immediate advantage and disadvantage. Varuna will give the larger picture. Whom does he accompany? God of vastness and purity, Mitra. As the name suggests, Mitra is the god of love, harmony, beatitude. When you have the larger picture, how do you deal with this creation? You deal with that automatically. You are not just a being hidden inside a hole, but you are entering a larger, vaster existence. So automatically Mitra comes. So the fable in the ashram was that Nalnida and Amrita were like Varuna and Mitra. And their rooms are just next to each other. And very different in their personalities. But they will go to dining room together, come back. And their natures were so different. About Nalnida it is said, if somebody knocked at his door, he will open the door and says, yes, what is it? And if you don't know what is the answer, if you are then the door is shut. But what a power of action. Somebody was telling me that how he went with a huge 2 months problem that was going on in his head. 2 or 3 months. So he went to Nalnida, he said, okay, you bring me tomorrow, write and give me. He wrote 35 pages whole night. He came to Nalnida thinking now he'll give some solution. Nalnida saw it and said, keep it and go. And gave him a blessing packet. He thought, what is it like? He has not even read it. And the man says, as I crossed the threshold, it was all gone. See, Nalnida is the person whom Dalai Lama, when he was asked, the present Dalai Lama, when he came to ashram, he was asked, who do you think after the mother can be a successor? Of course, he was asked by his secretary. They have this idea of successor. So he said, why? Nalini. And Nalnida, when he came to the room, Nalnida did not get up and suddenly do pranam and all. He was in the same majestic posture. He is the god of vastness. It is said that in him, Varuna was the godhead who was incarnating. Whereas Amrita, hello, hi, anybody, the most approachable man you can imagine in the ashram. And even when he had to turn away somebody, he would do it with a sense of humor, beatitude. So it is said that there was a man, every day he will come and start, tormenting him, this complaint, that problem. The only manager of the ashram. Mother said, he's the only manager. There can be nobody else other than him when he left his body. So because people asked, who will be the next manager? He said, there's only one. And somebody would come every day. So one day when the person came, Nalnida took a bundle of file and started walking out. So this man asked him, when will you come? He said, when you go away, then I'll come. You see, that beatitude. So it's two very different, but they work together. So Varuna and Mitra will come together. Then you have Bhag and Aryaman. Can you imagine? Bhag is the god of enjoyment. Bhojanam. Bhajan, they all come from Bhojan, the most primitive kind of joy that human beings get. So, Bhag is the god of enjoyment. But what does he do? How does he help us enjoy? He helps us. They all have to come together. Along with him is Aryaman. You must battle against darkness. Then only you are ready for that joy which is of a greater kind. It's not just an inner ananda, but the joy of creation. The felicity with which we meet with the hundreds and thousands of dealings in this world. So Bhag allows us that detailed enjoyment in everything. A person in whom Bhag is active, when he eats something, he relishes it. He is not like mix Karela and Khichdi and Rasgulla and I will eat. No, that was not the Vedic Rishi's way. They knew what is Karela, they knew what is Rasgulla. They did not mix up things. And they knew how to extract that joy from things in the true sense. Bhag. But Aryaman, the god of, later on he became the god of war. But who is he? He is the great warrior, the power, the strength which removes all darkness, gives us a straight response to truth. Then only you are an adhikari for the, what we call as everybody wants happiness, but first Aryaman should be established. So the path was inwardly. Light the flame, let Varuna and Mitra establish themselves, let Aryaman do the battling, and then you will see naturally you will have the joy in life, in everything. So they were the four great deities of the Vedic Pantheon. What about Indra? Indra is mind upgraded to its divine possibility. So the software of the mind, which is so small, when these gods have come and started their workings, then naturally Indra comes. So Indra gives to the mind a completely illumined, intuitive flashes through which one sees the truth. So Indra is sometimes described as Sahasra. She can have a global vision. Indra has a global understanding of the whole creation. Global is not just material level, at different levels. So Indra is in the Vedic Pantheon, not subsequently in the Puranas we see Indra losing his original status. So Indra was not just a god, he was also a status to which human beings could ascend. And these human beings which ascended to the home of, to the Swarlok, they became in their own right masters. So they were called as Ribhus. Ribhu, Vibhu. So they were artisans of immortality because they had gone through the process. So they were the one who built immortality here. Immortality means instead of things being subject to degeneration, you have a joy in the morning, it's gone in the evening. That's not what we want. We want a state of continuous felicity. So the Ribhus would help in building that. Immortality means something that stays, something that doesn't have a term. It does not cease with time. It is not time bound. So that they could build by fashioning the human vessel. So what do, Ribhus? They help in building the chariot. There are stories like that. Twastri, Indra. So what are they doing by building the chariot? They are making the body fit to receive this felicity, to make it fit for immortality. So these are the Ribhus. Then there are these gods, Ashwins. Who are they? Physician of the gods. So what do they do? What do the physicians of the god do? Do they diagnose viral fever and cure it? That's too much going below. What do? The Ashwins, they are always shown as twins on horses. What is horse? Steeds, force. They allow the proper harmonious functioning through the entire nerves and the senses. And the functioning can go to that extent that we don't have to, automatically we'll repel an illness. From a distance you can get to know. Mother speaks about this. Why? Because our nerves are so subtle and so beautifully refined. You will pass by and you will know that here is an ill will and you will protect yourself. But when the nerves are very gross and dulled, then you have to wait for a high fever or a COVID test. But otherwise you get to know from a distance, because the nerves are not just gross, they're also subtle. So what were the Ashwins doing? They were purifying the nervous system and the senses. So by doing it, they were helping us to build a body that is sound and robust. It was not like, doesn't matter how is health important, ultimately it is God. No. God wants us to lead a life of true joy and felicity. He doesn't want us to suffer. This idea that came later on, He wants us to suffer so that we can remember Him. One of the most horrible ideas of God that one can ever imagine. He gives us suffering so that we can remember Him. What kind of God He will be? Who will make us suffer? On the contrary, He wants us to have the joy of life in all its fullness. So ultimately, when all these have fashioned, and many other gods, Brahmanaspati is the power of the soul. So Brahmanaspati brings the mantra from the soul. The aspiration takes a form of word, a prayer, and connects us to the divine. That is Brahmanaspati. So he is also described as Brahma. So the creative word is with him. So it is the Brahmanaspati who holds within himself the power of the soul. That's why he is the Guru of the gods. All other gods have to listen to him because he has that power. Then there are these, we'll come to the last god later, but we have these three goddesses. There are feminine energies. So you have Saraswati, Ilamahi. So what does Saraswati do? She is the goddess of inspiration. So this inspiration is not only about, speaking about a subject, about many things we can know just by this faculty of inspiration. So she is the one who inspires Shruti, inspiration. Ila, Drishti, she will give us the vision. So they work together. Sri Aurobindo describes them as, in Savitri, there is a very interesting line, gleaming sisters of the dawn. So they two always together. So you have this hearing, Shruti. His hearing is not with this mortal ears, but Shruti is that the soul receives the inspiration. The mind is open to the higher inspiration. Along with that comes a vision that can see things. Again, this vision is not like in front of us we are seeing a figure or image. We may see that, but it's an inner seeing where we see through things. So that kind of insight begins to awaken by the working of these two sisters. And they come when Mahi or Bharati comes. She is, as we know from Maharlok, she comes from the vast home of truth. And through all this, where are we going? We are going to meet our Creator, Surya Savitri, the effulgent one, the home of truth, the home of Agni. From there it has traveled all the way into matter and it's awakening and carrying us forward. And what is it that we discover there? Why all this journey? Some Riks will place Som first, Surya later, it doesn't matter. Is Ananda. Just imagine the goal is Ananda, Soma. But with Soma is a god who can be extremely, that ecstasy is very difficult to bear for human system. So wherever description of Soma comes, it is said, well, the patra has to be baked properly. If it is not baked, you are putting a kacha, raw thing, unripe thing, below the Niagara Fall. It not only the patram will flow away, you will also flow away with it. It's tremendous. So when all this is ready, so there are two ways the Vedic rishis describe the patra has to be baked. One is through yoga, tapasya, tapa, or through bhoga. How does bhoga help? Because bhoga will give rise to roga. Roga will give rise to suffering. Suffering will bake the path, a very dangerous way, not recommended. Either which way you will go toward that. So that explains in the grand scheme of things. No need to bring in karma, papa, punya. Suffering comes, either you walk the straight path, Agni, Ne, Supatharaya, the straight path. If you walk the crooked path, he has posted the fellows called Mr. Suffering. And he will push you toward the path of the right and the how. You have enjoyed this cuisine, that cuisine. After some age, doctor will tell you can't eat. You have all the money, but you can't eat. Why? Because now this suffering is not, to say that because you did a bad karma. Not that karmic law doesn't exist, but why in the Vedas you find such a direct clarity about all these things? You don't have to bring in that. Suffering itself becomes then a grace to turn you toward the right and the light. But that's not the path man should take. He's not meant to take that. He has to fight with the inner obstacle, and for that these gods will do. Meaning thereby, how does Indra fight? Very simple. Grow in the divine light, divine consciousness, and it will fight out the darkness within you. Don't start struggling with it. Grow in that. And even today, this is one of the fundamental psychological laws of life. I keep telling, when somebody says, I have this problem, I have that problem. I say, you see, in life, whatever you concentrate on, that will increase. Think about yourself, you will be miserable, no matter whoever you are. Come out of that littleness, enter into vastness, you will see that suffering will just begin to melt away. Why? Because you are not giving it importance. Become indifferent to that. And give importance to this growth of consciousness. That will take care of many, many, many things. And eventually of everything. So this was the beautiful path. And these were the gods. They were not just physical things. Varuna sending rain and Indra, thunderbolt, lightnings in the sky. What are these lightnings of Indra? They are intuitive flashes through the brain. They suddenly come, illumining the night and showing us a vast field. They come and they retire. That's what Indra is. Then you have also Vishnu, the all-pervading vastness, like an eye extended in heaven. And you have the three strides of Vishnu. So Vishnu is, and Rudra, who works along with him, Hari Har, that is later Puranic, but he is the great destroyer. So all these gods were powers and aspects of the divine. We can look upon them as pure physical things. Doesn't matter. All storms, upheavals, the Rudra force is at play. Will be correct. Meaning thereby, if you master the Rudra force within yourself, you can master this also. And its living proof is Sri Aurobindo. So how did he master, when the storms would come, cyclones? There was a time when cyclones will come in so much that, like Trinavrat, it will take away human beings. And that story is told when Sri Aurobindo is sitting at the desk and writing, and mother comes to close the windows and she sees not a drop of water is entering. Now this story is so interesting. You master that energy within you, you are now that existence, the lord of that existence. The same Rudra force are creating problems outside. So when you have mastered and you say stop, they stop. How mother would say pray to the rain. And even recently when tsunami came, one of the girls actually saw a lady standing in the middle of the ocean with two arms spread aside. And it's a fact that tsunami hit all around except 5 kilometers within the radius of the ashram. So because if you master this, you master that. So that's how we see them mastering. How did Lakshmana could master the ocean and bring out the being of the ocean? Because he had that inner capacity. And so he says, I'm going to dry you up. Entire world forces within him he had dried up. All attachments were gone in his bhakti for Lord Rama. So the ocean knew if he tells me something, he has mastered the world forces. See, he was a person who did not sleep. He was away from family, completely detached, completely dedicated to the service of Lord Rama. If Lakshmana took the arrow, so the ocean better yield. So this is the way they approached from within outward. There were people who understood only the outward thing. And even now, this thing is so valid. If we have to master an outer movement, we have to start with inner mastery. And it will extend outside. So we have all... And Sri Aurobindo at one point says, entire Second World War, outer things. How was Sri Aurobindo doing? Sitting in his room. And he was asked that... are you using the supramental force? He said, no. Why? It is devastating. I am using the overmental force so that it will work in its own way, work through it. Otherwise, it will devastate. It's too powerful. So this was the path the Vedic rishis shown us to. That's why the heaven and earth, to combine them, make them equal and one. The mind and body, because they always spoke of this mathematics of Vedas. Very interesting. One. Then two is the divine and human. Then you have the three higher principles and the three lower principles. Then connecting them is a fourth one. Together they become 7. So this is how they understood creation, which was so complete and so beautiful. So these are the gods, outwardly material functioning, and inwardly they were psychological functioning. And deep inside, these psychological functionings are not combined, limited only to us, but they were cosmic beings and cosmic forces who were working all over creation. The same Rudra makes this person, suddenly when he touches, it creates a Veerbhadra. Master this Rudra. You are Shiva the benevolent, who can do a tandav and bring out a whole. The same Rudra will create, like Poseidon, storms in the sea. All of them, one cosmic functioning. The same Agni, the same Vayu. So Vayu is also there. So Vayu is the god of breath. Thank God, he said, you have not called me. So suddenly, Vayu. Who is Vayu? Vayu is the prana force. They saw this entire functioning is the power that expands things, makes them grow. So the same Vayu, which like the breath of God expands the universe, is the same Vayu, which informs us with, fills us with energy. The luminous force, in its origin, it's the force of the divine which has gone into creation. So What about breathing? We thought about breathing. Breathing is only an instrument and mechanism. It's possible for man, if he has mastered the Vayu, to really do away with breath. Sri Aurobindo speaks about it. Paul Brunton mentions it in his book. And maybe tomorrow we'll have such a new instrument which will not depend on this breathing, but some other way. Because basically it's Vayu. Nature is only building instruments for Vayu to work in a certain way. Now you see how it acts on different levels. So you have Vayu. We normally say na, bahut gas ho gaya. We use the word Vayu. Now if this is what? This is the seat of vital energy in man. Same vital energy which is working in the entire creation. So why vital energy is accumulated inside? If there is a physician, based on the Vedic system, you say, you know what? Lot of vital energy inside which you don't know how to release and what to do. Look at successful people who don't know how to utilize vital energy. Invariably, that's why middle-aged tummy comes up. Okay. Vital energy. So this is, you can understand all this from some people have the right balance. They take in and expend very well. So the tummy is inside because they have a right balance of the prana coming in and going out. They are healthy. So you can understand a whole lot of things based on this inner understanding of life. It's not just about some yagna, people are offering something. So all these gods were powers of the divine working in the cosmos. When we tune to them, not only they set right our inner state, they help us master the outer life and they lead us towards plenitude and fulfillment. So the goal of the Vedic rishis was not escape from creation, but arrive at a greater plenitude. So when they arrived at this greater and greater plenitude through ascension, meaning thereby from the limited mental consciousness, we ascended into higher and wider regions of consciousness. So they started operating upon us. So human consciousness became better and better, upgraded. But they reached a point beyond which they saw that there is something which can completely change, ultimate transformation. So we have this prayer of Yagnavalkya, Hiranmayena Patrena Satyasya Pihitam Mukham. I see the face of truth. I have reached so far to the gates of truth. They could, you see, that path is connected today. That is the path man is meant to take. If we connect with the Vedic paths, we will not think about this running away, escapism, nor will be lost in materialism in the way we understand today. So he says, I see the home of truth, but it's covered with a lid. I want that law of truth. Satya dharma idriste. And then that law of truth is revealed, or rather released for earth and men by the tapasya of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. That is the supramental. Now, obviously, from Vedic rishis till this date, man was, you see, Vedas came, the rishis came as involutionary beings. They could carry us to that point. But human consciousness kept falling. So Vedas were lost into Vedvada, the ritualistic. Then Upanishad came. They on one side took out the essence. But in that bargain, they lost the comprehensiveness of the Vedas. It became just an intellectual and philosophical statement of truth through which you could arrive at some great realizations. But just to realize God within was not their goal. It was a plenitude. So they lost it. So again it went into another decline. So came these Brahmanas and, Puranas. So Brahmanas preserved the ritualistic side. The Puranas started revealing to us the mystic symbolic significance. And then the Gita, which gave us the essence, but once again set man back to the path of works. That is the great teaching of the Gita. Don't run away. Don't just get into this inner, internal. So Gita tells us not to get involved with Vedvad. Not against Vedas, but Vedvad. Discover this truth through the path of works, which is the proper thing for man. And then comes Sri Aurobindo and says, well, there is one day, a little more, a step, and all is sky and God. And that is the path. So we see the connecting link, and that's why Sri Aurobindo gives so much importance. So we must read something. In that incidentally, in that book, which is our reference point, The Secret of the Vedas, we have hymn to Atris. So Atris, like Angiras, they are one of the Saptarishis. And Atri is considered to be Manas Putra of Brahma. So he has the creative word with him. Atri Rishi. So his hymns are important, like Angiras Rishi. So they are important. And Atri's counterpart, consort is Anusuya, free of all jealousy. So this is the Atri. So Sri Aurobindo has translated a number of hymns of the Atris. And these hymns reveal to us the nature of the gods, how they function at great length. Obviously, we are focusing only on the overall overview of the book, but they are worth reading. Every bit of it, I just remember my very early days, synthesis of yoga and reading Secret of the Vedas. I was jumping with joy. Oh, this is what it means. Oh, Indra is this, oh, Agni is this. As if you are connecting with some back ancient hoary past. So, but in the first part, you have this summary and conclusions, which gives us a very good overview of Secret of the Vedas. And at the end, you have Doctrine of the Mystics. Doctrine of the Mystics we'll take in the next one when we talk about the next volume, Hymns to the Mystic Fire. So, summary of conclusions. I'll just take few passages where he says very clearly, when we determine their sense, we have determined the sense of the whole Rik Samhita. If Vritra and the waters symbolize the cloud and the rain and the gushing forth of the 7 rivers of the Punjab, and if Angirasas are the bringers of physical dawn, then the Vedas is a symbolism of natural phenomena personified in the figure of gods and rishis and demons. If on the other hand, this is a symbolism of the struggle between spiritual powers of light and darkness, we are the Kurukshetra. Truth and falsehood, knowledge and ignorance, death and immortality, then that is the real sense of the whole Veda. We have concluded that the Angiras Rishis are bringers of the dawn. There is a whole chapter on Angiras and the truth. There are stories, Saraswati and her consort. There is, about Saraswati, Angiras legend, Indra's legend, and Agastya, the colloquy between them. We have touched upon it in the previous one, or the previous to previous. We have concluded that the Angiras Rishis are bringers of the dawn, rescuers of the sun out of the darkness. So where is the sun being rescued? That sun is hidden here in the inconscient. So in origin, if you see Yama, this is another very interesting thing. Yama is the child of sun. And in the original sense, he is not a god of death. He is only a restrainer. So it doesn't allow you to suddenly take leaps and bounds. Why? Because otherwise you will enter into confusion. The path of the Vedic Rishis is step by step. If you try to forcibly break through nature, then you will become like, don't want to say Zen Buddhism or things like that. You discover the one which is disconnected with this entire reality. So they allowed this process. So Yama was the restrainer. And Yama has 2 dogs who are called Sarameya. And Indra also has a dog, and she is called Sarama. Sarama is the goddess of intuition. And Sarameya, she also shows the path in the darkness. Yama operates. So when we are in total darkness, what does Yama do? He restrains you. This further and no further. That is his law. But it's not the law of truth. But to that extent it helps. Just imagine man's unbridled swachandata, where it will take him. And its last, of course, he has been given so much importance. Now what we have as death is, much of it is creation of the human consciousness. That's why according to a Puranic legend, we have Yama and you have Mrityu. How did he come into existence? How did Mrityu come into existence? When the first human being died, then he was told, just as Ribhus, the first human beings who ascended to the heights. So similarly, those who could not first died, he was said, you are the guardian of the underworld. So there are 2 different things. One is death, who is the guardian of the underworld. And his task is to draw back. He is fallen. So he wants, akele mein kyun rahun? I want more and more. So, like, some people like to indulge in vices not alone, but with a group. And because we have given him so much importance, he has become too huge in human consciousness. So that is the death of Savitri. Death in Savitri, in Sri Aurobindo's epic poem. But Yama in the origin is the son of Aditi who has been cast into the darkness. So Aditi has 8 sons. The 7 are the Adityas burning in the effulgent skies. Of course, there are 12 according to another way of looking. And Aditi is the infinite consciousness, Aditi. And there is Diti, the divisive consciousness. So a portion of one of them is cast into this divisive consciousness, where it has to struggle to recreate unity. But because he is there is always deep within us the sense of unity or oneness. That's why we want to claim it ignorantly through desires. I will have this, I will have that. And why desires can never be fulfilled? Because it is impelled by this secret sense of oneness. How to fulfill it? By recovering the oneness within. So you see, a lot of psychological aspects come into it. There is no spoil sport God who wants us to punish for desires. No. But in ignorance, that's the way human beings follow. So, sun, but that this dawn, sun, darkness are figures used with a spiritual significance. The central conception of the Veda is the conquest of the truth out of the darkness of ignorance. And by the conquest of the truth, the conquest also of immortality. It is here, buried here. So, dragon chasing its tail, all these things which the mother speaks about, the supermind which is hidden inside has to burst out by the action of the supermind above. The involution, all these ideas in their key sense are there in the Vedas. For the Vedic, rhythm is a spiritual as well as a psychological conception. It is the true being, the true consciousness, the true delight of existence. Beyond this earth of body, this mid-region of vital force, this ordinary sky or heaven of mind, we have to cross beyond all these planes in order to arrive at the higher plane of that superconscient truth. This is the battle, journey, but so wonderful. Because that's our home, that's our destiny. Who doesn't want to reach to his true home and recover all the plenitude? Otherwise, we are like people who are carrying a big inheritance. But it's like Narayan Murthy when he was a deep socialist belief. No, when in Yugoslavia he was put inside not a prison, like dungeon literally. Then he realized this so-called communism, this is so dangerous. And then finally, because they had good relation with India, they said, we'll leave you outside the border and be done with it. So when he was left, then he realized that this is such a dangerous doctrine. So we are like that. We are in the prison. You say in the prison, you know what, my dad is a king and he has this inheritance. Where is your dad? Bring him. I'm sorry, but God is within me. He will say, okay, where is he? That is the story of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. Saying is not enough. The Vedic rishis wanted to realize it in life. When you realize it, then the doors of prison open. Like with Krishna, like with Sri Aurobindo, like with all of us. So this is what they were, the truth which is hidden here. The ancient fathers who first found the wisdom of which the Vedic hymns are a chant and memory and renewal in experience. There was a civilization before the Vedas. The human fathers, the forefathers. And Vedas were a recollection of what they had transmitted. The 7 divine Angirases are sons or powers of Agni, powers of the seer will. Why? Because they had discovered this fire within and become one with it. That's why they became luminous guides in the human night. So that's why the Saptarishi, see how beautifully it works. When the present navigation system was not there with these aircrafts, I have flown. In aircraft, we didn't have this instrumental navigation. So we used to navigate, we means the pilots, I have traveled with them, night flying, they will see the Saptarishis, the North Star. Not only mariners, even the flights, they were navigating which way is the North Star to know the direction. So outwardly, the Saptarishis, inwardly, there are guides of the human night, human beings in the night. How do they guide? What is special about them? Have they read the books? No, they may not have. But they have become one with the seer will. Who is the seer will? Seer is the Surya Savitri. So it's so beautiful, this entire understanding. The flame of divine force, instinct with divine knowledge, which is kindled for the victory. They are the ones who had done that. The Bhrigus have found this flame secret in the growths of the earthly existence. But the Angiras kindle it on the altar of sacrifice and maintain the sacrifice through the periods of the sacrificial year, symbolizing the periods of the divine labor by which the sun of truth is recovered out of the darkness. It may be long. The Vedic rishis say how long we have to battle with the night. At one point they say day comes, but night comes back again. Then they discover both of them are helping the divine child grow. And it's so psychologically so interesting. You can take out as many sutras as we want. Similarly, we see Agni, sometimes described as a balaka. He is a child. Why? Because he is the last baby which is born out of mind, life, body. When Agni is born, he is like a child. What we have to do is nurture it and nourish it. He is a little baby. He needs nourishment. So if you see the symbols, it works so beautifully. And offsprings. The offsprings are the many powers that come out as the soul increases in man. The sacrifice is the giving by man of what he possesses in his being to the higher or divine nature. And its fruit is the further enrichment of his manhood by the lavish bounty of the gods. So you give to the gods, and of course through them to the one God, and they grow in you. So this was the transaction taking place. If you don't sacrifice, the gods will extract sacrifice from you, because this is the law. Only thing is, you will feel very sorry that, oh, why have you taken away? But this is the law on which creation is built. But when you sacrifice consciously, then the gods grow in us. So sacrifice is what? Lower for the sake of higher. That is how tena tyaktena bhunjita. Again we see the word with that bhuj, bhaj, bhunjita, tena tyakten. By renouncing, you have the greater delight of existence. So we have a choice, either this pleasure or a greater delight of existence. So wonderful this whole journey is. Of course, Sri Aurobindo has taken it to another level altogether, and the grace of the mother. But just to understand how our forefathers walked the way, is so amazing. The wealth thus gained constitutes a state of spiritual riches, prosperity, felicity, which is itself a power for the journey and a force of battle. For the sacrifice is a journey, a progression. The sacrifice itself travels, led by Agni, up the divine path to the gods. Agni is the leader. Kartikeya, he is the warlord of the gods. All the gods will follow wherever Kartikeya goes. He is the flame, and with him is the victory, the peacock. And where does it take us? It takes us to the divine world of Swar. The journey of the sacrifice is also a battle, for it is opposed by Panis, Vritras, and other powers or evil and falsehood. And of this warfare, the conflict of Indra and the Angiras with the Panis is a principal episode. So Angiras is when divine mind, then he is the last. It's the last battle. The mother would put it very simply. The night is darkest before the dawn. And if you just learn to wait, dawn will arise. Because this is the natural consequence of the journey. The principal features of sacrifice are the kindling of the divine flame, aspiration, the offering of the grita, the illumined mind, and the suma wine, the ecstasy that comes. Don't let it be thrown away. And the chanting of the sacred word, the word that springs from the depths of the soul, is the sacred word, the mantra. It's not just about a mantra which is outside, but one that actually Brahmanaspati. It is the power of the soul which takes a rhythmic vibration and clothes itself in a thought form. That is the mantra. It could simply be Ma. It doesn't have to be necessarily. Or one of those, verses which touch us deep within, till we have found the inner word. The higher existence is the divine, the infinite, of which the shining cow, the infinite mother, Aditi, is the symbol. The lower is subject to her dark form, Diti. So it's so beautiful. And then Brahaspati is the master of the creative word. So to bring out the soul is to bring out that vibration, that mantra within our consciousness. It springs forth, and Mother speaks of that. The mantra is something which comes from within if you need it. Who will give the mantras? He says the psychic being. But if you don't find it, then you can pick up one of the mantras. So that's how. But as you grow from within, it will be your connect to the divine. So that is the mantra. So we see how closely their yoga runs. Therefore, Agni, Indra, Brahaspati, Soma are all described as winners of the hearts of the sun. The powers of light which have gone stray, the lost cows, captured by the Panis and Britras, the delight which is turns into dark enjoyments, all that they capture back. Because this is energy which is wasted. So when you hold it back, then we grow in that natural joy. And destroyers of the dasyus who conceal and withhold them from man. Saraswati, who is the stream of the word or inspiration of the truth, is also a dasyu slayer. You see, there is a whole battle described in the Puranas between Saraswati and the dasyus. And winner of the shining hearts, and they are discovered by Sarama, forerunner of Indra, who is a solar or dawn goddess and seems to symbolize the intuitive power of the truth. Usha, the dawn, is at once herself a worker in the great victory, and in her full advent its luminous result. How does Saraswati destroy the dasyus? See this practical aspect. If one is depressed, if one is feeling very low, if one is besieged by torment, anger, anguish, fear, take out one of those inspired verses from Vedas, Upanishads, and we are so fortunate, Savitri. See what it does. Because it's a direct descent that's streaming in. If one can oneself be open, it is wonderful. But if not, then, or just write it as, give it a poetic expression if one is open to Saraswati. You see, by the time you have finished writing, the state changes. Why? Because Saraswati is streaming in. If one is open, she streams in and destroys the dasyus. Or Saraswati is not only about poetry. She may inspire you to do a creative action. Pick up a painting. See, entire processes will emerge from this core truth. Or else pick up Savitri and read it. It is not just Saraswati, but Saraswati, Ilamahi and beyond. The solar rays pouring into words. Read it, and because it's the streaming in of truth, it destroys the panis, the vritras. Suddenly you say, oh, why was I living in this fear and depression? And we attribute magic. Yes, it's magic, but a magic with a process. This is the process. Because it kindles the God within. Usha is the divine dawn. For the sun that arises by her coming is the sun of the superconscient truth. The day he brings is the day of the true life and the true knowledge. The night he dispels is the night of the ignorance which yet conceals the dawn in its bosom. Night concealing the dawn in its bosom. This later on idea, this is night, that is day, let me go away from here to there, is half-truth. To recover the dawn concealed in the night. The Navagavas and the Dasgavas. This is the whole journey of man. So, we have all these, and finally, it is also the recovery of the sun that was lying in the darkness. For it is said that the sun, that truth, was the thing found by Indra and the Angiras in the cave of the Panis. So if we don't see the inner symbol, we'll say, Kya? What is this Vedic rishis, sun lying in cave? What kind of people are they? Did they discover some G bulb? Some power with which they could light up a bulb? This is how we will understand. But to a yogi, mystic, it is so clear. Go through that process and you will see that every time you pass through a night, a greater dawn emerges. So he speaks about the Angiras myth, giving us the whole secret, and toward the end, he says, similarly, if these, here, thus the interpretation of the Angiras myth gives us the key to the whole secret of the Veda. For if the cows and horses lost by the Aryans and recovered for them by the gods, the cows and horses of which Indra is the lord and giver, and indeed himself the cow and horse, are not physical cattle. He is the giver of this illumination, he is the ultimate divine mind. But how they are lost? All this panis, vritras, they say, Humko chahiye, we want this. So what happens? People who have great illuminations become court philosophers. Because they have to flatter now. If they flatter with their lovely words, then what will happen? That power of illumination goes the wrong direction. Of course, they will win some awards, but they will lose that shining truth which is being born and growing in them. So that's how the Vritas Pani have great ways, of great means cunning, deceit. If you want to read about them, Descent into Night and the World of Falsehood, how they operate. If these elements of the wealth sought by the sacrifice are the symbols of a spiritual riches, so also must be its other elements which are always associated with them. Sons. From where it came ignorantly. We want sons. Sons are the masculine energies and daughters the feminine energies. Both are there in the Vedas with their own function. Offsprings, the powers of light which grow into us. And wherever it is Shakti, it is the feminine energy. So the Agni has both aspects. Knowledge and power, will. So, men, gold, treasure, etc. If the cow which the Ghrita is the yield is not a physical cow but the shining mother, then the Ghrita itself which is found in the waters and is said to be triply secreted by the panis in the cow is no physical offering, nor the honey wine of Soma, either which is also said to exist in the rivers and to rise in a honeyed wave from the ocean and to flow streaming up to the gods. And if these, then also the other offerings of the sacrifice must be symbolic. Similarly, if these Dasyus who refuse the gift and the sacrifice and hate the word and the gods, and with whom the Aryans are constantly at war, these Vritras, Panis and others are not human enemies, but powers of darkness, falsehood and evil, then the whole idea of the Aryan wars and kings and nations begins to take upon itself the subject aspect of spiritual symbol and epilogue. So this is how the Vedas are such. Last I'll just read about the gods in the Vedic Pantheon. It will be well to examine the other companion legends where he says, in the first place, Indra the Vritra slayer is along with Agni one of the two chief gods of the Vedic Pantheon. And if his character and functions can be properly established, we shall have the general type of the Aryan gods fixed firmly. Secondly, the Maruts, his companions, singers of the sacred chant, are the strongest points of the naturalistic theory of Vedic worship. They are undoubtedly storm gods and no other of the greater Vedic deities, Agni or the Ashwins or Varuna or Mitra or Twastri and the goddesses or even Surya the sun or Usha the dawn have such a pronounced physical character. If then these storm gods can be shown to have a psychological character and symbolism, then there can be no further doubt about the profounder sense of the Vedic religion and ritual. So this is what we just spoke about in the Secret of the Vedas. They are described in great details, particularly the hymn to the Atris. Even before that, Sri Aurobindo describes, but in selected translations of hymns to the Atris, we'll see each god described so beautifully. Indra, Vishnu, the all-pervading, Soma, of course Agni, and Vayu, the Maruts, the Ribhus, all of them are invoked in different verses. And Soma, of course, the delight. And Sri Aurobindo very painstakingly takes out from the Riks based on the philology that he has given to us and how they function, and presents the entire thing to us as if a whole path which was covered with dust has been cleansed by the flame of truth. And we suddenly see that we feel so proud that we belong, legitimately proud, that we belong to our forefathers who took this ascension, this wonderful journey. They were not building skyscrapers outside, but they were making of man a skyscraper for earth to ascend to heaven. And we feel so happy that we connect our ancient longings to the modern one, and the entire Vedic path which took us to the Swarlok takes one more step so that this very place, this very earth can become a home of the truth, home of the true and the wonderful. Thank you.